Okay, so by popular demand, there were so many Sharks fans in the comments section asking for Professor Hockey. We have delivered Professor Hockey, who that's what we're going to call you by. We won't reveal your real name, but tell us, Professor, where you're from and how you got into the Sharks, because this is not a typical Sharks fan story.
No, I'm actually not even from the US. I'm from Canada, Montreal, Quebec. And growing up, family watches hockey as you would expect from a Canadian family. My oldest brother, Montreal Canadiens fan, but my second oldest brother was a huge Sharks fan, and because his favorite player was Joe Thornton. So actually, on his wall growing up, he had a life-size sticker of Joe Thornton, 6 foot tall, looking over him while he slept, I guess, a bit weird, growing up on his bedroom wall. And so he would watch a ton of the Sharks, and so I'd start watching a ton of the Sharks as well, and the rest is, I guess, history. Started following them since then, and it's been a while now at this point.
It's very cool. So you've got the YouTube channel. That's where everybody knows you from. Now, this is, first of all, really weird because usually that whiteboard behind you has a ton of information and all the stuff you're going to go through, whether it's a game day preview or a game recap. So there's that, but is that wall behind you also teal, like, specifically? You painted that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
it actually was yellow back in the day, but for this season specifically, we painted it teal so it could have more of a shark feeling to it.
Yeah.
So now I feel more involved with the team.
That's awesome. So tell me about the channel and what you do there. And it's mostly analysis based. You offer some insights and perspectives, but what do you do on the channel for those who aren't familiar?
Yeah, so I review every single game, every single Sharks game of the year, so all 82 of them. And then I try to, during the season, have whenever there's maybe some news, like a trade or a signing or like a really kind of obvious rumor of something, I do have that type of video. I'll put out player grades of every quarter of the season to discuss how people are doing, maybe discuss the San Jose Barracuda at some point. And then, of course, during the off season when there aren't games to play and you got to fill up time, I'll have more of the kind of rumor analysis, review of the season, review of each player's season. And I just keep going throughout the entire year, fully Sharks focused, and just try to discuss the team that everybody loves.
Now, I'll be honest, I only found you this season, but is this year 2 for you in doing what you do?
Actually, this is year 7.
Whoa!
I started in 2018.
I'm sorry.
But no, it's fine because I really only started picking up steam, I guess, this season.
Why do you think that is? I mean, the team is regrouping and growing, and it's not like their popularity is at its peak. Why do you think it's been this season where people found you?
Well, I think because like the first year I did it was the last year the Sharks actually made the playoffs. So 18, 19, like the year they pick up Erik Karlsson. But, you know, it's the first year. You're not expecting much of it. And then after that, the Sharks kind of fell off a cliff a little bit, started missing the playoffs more. Not everybody's searching out for what people are saying about the Sharks. But this season, you know, all the excitement, the Macklin Celebrini effect, people now, once again, very interested in what the Sharks are doing. So I think that has probably led to a increased level of visibility for the channel. And then eventually, like what YouTube does, it kind of snowballs. And so here we are.
The old algorithm. It had me find you, so I appreciate the algorithm. Okay, since you mentioned it and the trajectory of this team, I just want to maybe get your headline for where they're at, where they've been recently, and where you think things stand right now. If you had to kind of summarize everything that's going on with the Sharks, what's your big picture headline about this team right now?
Well, I think it's no secret that this season has been a little bit more of a struggle than maybe people were expecting. I don't think expectations were too high, but when last year you're finishing dead last and then this season, 57 games in, you seem to be on track to be finishing in that same spot, you could feel as though things have maybe stagnated a little bit. But to me, I'm looking more so on the bright side here. I think there's been some very notable improvements that the team has made. You know, you take a look at the goal differential that has increased well, maybe not significantly, but by a decent amount compared to last year. And then you take a look at the fact that they're involved in a lot more of these games. I think amongst all the NHL teams, they have some of the most one-goal games in the entire league this season, excluding empty netters. So there are times where they get right to the end of it, 60 minutes you got to enjoy because it felt as though at any time they could win the game, compared to last season where they might give up a 3-0 lead in the first 10 minutes and then that could just be done. So I think just notable improvements on the ice. But the biggest thing for me this season is that we're finally getting some more fun and excitement back into this team. It felt as though at times last season it was pretty tough to get through the year. Sometimes you're just kind of going through the motions. But now, like, you watch a Sharks game, and when it finishes, you're waiting anxiously for the next Sharks game because you want to see what this team is going to do again. So, like right now, the NHL is at the Four Nations break, right? 2 weeks off. It's fun to watch best on best hockey. Great, Canada, US, Sweden, Finland. But in the back of my mind, I'm watching these games. I'm like, well, when are we getting back to the Sharks, right? Like 2 weeks off. This is too much time for me. Last season, it would have been viewed as like a blessing, 2 weeks off. This season, it's like, let's get back to some Sharks hockey. So I think the excitement that we're seeing with the future stars on the ice, even if you're really not getting the results right now, you can see that like the foundation level of this team is now there. And the light at the end of the tunnel, that it always existed. You always knew at some point they'd come out of this rebuild. But last season, it's kind of a dim light. You couldn't really see it that easily. This year, though, fully on display every night. Celebrini, Smith, Eklund, all of the young guys who have come up from the Barracuda as well, like Askarov, Graf, and these players is really giving you hope for the future of this franchise. So again, this season, it's easy to view it maybe slightly disappointingly just because of the start they've had, 57 games in, your last place. But it is truly a good marker of where the Sharks are going in the next few years.
What's your favorite thing to do in terms of covering this team? Is it breaking down game-to-game action? Is it looking at some of the young players and their development, or analyzing trades and moves and potential stuff? Like, what's the thing that you get the most joy out of?
I think game to game is probably just because it's got like a very consistent thing to it. You know, every other night or whatever, when the game is on, you're going to have something, you're going to talk about it. People can come over and say, okay, I thought of this about the game, or I thought that about the game. The trades all obviously are very nice, and people love to discuss the rumors. Those are usually the videos that do the best, that obviously make some sense. But with them being more sporadic and you kind of capitalize on the chance when they come. I like the sort of more consistent game reviews to really be able to have a schedule to it and see the general progress of the team through the season.
I don't want to generalize here, but you're a young person. It seems like you've got a lot of energy, you've got a lot of knowledge and passion behind what you do. And I'm just curious here, you're doing the YouTube thing right now. Are you trying to get into a career path here? Is this a long-term vision for you? You're very good at what you do.
Well, it would obviously be nice if something were to come out of nowhere.
Okay.
And say, hey, you want like an offer or something?
They know where to find you.
Now,
okay. Yeah.
Right now, I'm just sort of enjoying what I'm doing.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Kind of going with it. So
it's very cool. Last couple things here. Where do you see this all going? And none of us know maybe the timeline of it. I think we all have an idea with the franchise, and things are in the right direction. Certainly another high draft pick, or draft picks, I should say, plural, this summer is going to change that. How do you see the next 6 months, year, 2 years going for this franchise?
Well, I think the last couple months here of the season aren't going to be great. The team, as the deadline gets closer, we're going to start maybe selling off a couple more players already. They moved on from Granlund and Ceci, and the team was already last place with those two, so you're not exactly expecting a huge turnaround. And then maybe guys like Cunnin or Sturm could also get moved on expiring contracts. So I don't expect the last 25 games to be great results-wise, but still going to continue hopefully with that excitement, maybe call up a few players from the Barracuda to see what they're able to do here at the end of the season. But I suspect as we move forward into the coming years that things should improve. I've always said this, but the 25-26 was to me kind of like a step forward type of year. Maybe not quite making the playoffs. I think that might be too much of an optimistic view, but I think being in maybe the 7th to 8th last range so that you can get to January, February, start to play some more meaningful games, feel as though maybe you're still in that playoff race instead of being out of it already by the time the holiday break rolls around. I look at a team like the Anaheim Ducks this season. They're about 10 points out of his playoff spot. They probably won't make it. The likelihood is quite low, but they could at the very least in that dressing room say, like, we've got a chance. If we win a bunch of games, it's not impossible. And so that can kind of keep you motivated. So that's really where I see 25-26. I think 26-27 would be more so the Sharks playoff year, where if things go right, if the moves are made, they can kind of get back into that conversation. A wild card spot would definitely up for play. I think that will really depend on a lot of the young guys, how they develop over these next couple seasons with the Barracuda, maybe some of the other junior teams around the world. But I think also, as we have seen from rebuilding teams in the NHL, it's not just about how your draft picks pan out, but you also have to go and explore other mediums to acquire players, trades or signings. I remember Marian Hossa being brought in by the Chicago Blackhawks back in 2010. That was a huge move. It's not just drafting Kane and Taves, it's
Right.
about bringing the guys to support those players. And so these last couple seasons, a lot of the free agent signings have been more so filling in holes. I think Toffoli is probably the first big one that we have seen to really help out this team. And a lot of the trades have been about selling off assets to pick up draft picks. And so over these next couple of years, I suspect we'll see kind of the opposite of that. And we'll start to really build in and bring in the pieces so that 26, 27, if that doesn't occur, I think 27, 28 is probably like the deadline to make the playoffs again. If that doesn't happen, something probably has gone wrong. But I think the next 2 to 3 years should really start to get back to where the Sharks were once. And then once we get to like closer to the 2030s, that's when we should see a very competitive, consistent Stanley Cup competing team.
I tell you what, in the near term, I feel like this could be the summer of Calder for the Calder Trophy, obviously, and Macklin Celebrini is going to be in that competition. But the Calder Cup, you mentioned the Barracuda earlier. I would love to see that team make a run. Their young players come together, and even if there's bubble players on the Sharks, stack the deck down there, have those guys make a run. Professor, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. Maybe next time you could write me a little message on that whiteboard. I'd love to get up there someday. It would be an honor. But keep up the good work. We appreciate you, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.